What if the clue that solved a murder wasn't a fingerprint, wasn't a weapon, but a footprint? A single, bare footprint. This is the story of Jeannie Childs. June 13th, 1993, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It started with a strange complaint. Neighbors living below a fourth-floor apartment noticed water leaking through their ceiling. But this wasn't normal water. It was tinted red. When police arrived and forced their way upstairs, they stepped into a nightmare. 35-year-old Jeannie Childs lay dead inside her apartment. She had been stabbed more than 60 times. There was no sign of forced entry, no obvious weapon, and no immediate suspect. But something else caught investigators' attention. Jeannie was wearing socks, yet scattered across the apartment floor were bloody, bare footprints. They were clear, distinct, and they did not belong to her. Whoever killed Jeannie had walked through her blood, barefoot, and somehow they vanished. Detectives immediately began looking at the people closest to Jeannie. Her roommate, Arthur Gray, became an early focus. Hairs found under Jeannie's fingernails initially seemed to match him, and statistically, roommates are often involved. But Gray had a strong alibi. He was more than 300 miles in Milwaukee at the time of the murder, and when investigators compared his feet to the bloody prints, they didn't match. Arthur Gray was ruled out. The footprints didn't match anyone else either. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly the case went cold. Years turned into decades. The bloody footprint, once thought to be the key, sat quietly in evidence storage. Jeannie Childs' murder became one of Minneapolis's most haunting unsolved cases. Until science changed the rules. In 2015, investigators decided to take another look. Advances in DNA testing had revolutionized cold cases across the country. Evidence from Jeannie's apartment was re-examined, and this time something new emerged. DNA from an unknown male was found on multiple items at the crime scene: a comforter, a towel, a washcloth, and even the bathroom sink. It wasn't contamination, it was consistent. Whoever this DNA belonged to had been inside the apartment, very likely during the murder. But there was still no name. That's when investigators turned to a controversial but powerful tool: genetic genealogy. They uploaded the unknown DNA profile to public genealogy databases, and soon a family tree began to form. At the top were two brothers living in Minnesota. One of them stood out: Jerry Westrom, a married businessman, a father, a hockey dad. No criminal record, no known connection to Jeannie Childs, at least none that he admitted. In 2019, investigators began quietly watching him. They followed him to a hockey game, and when Westrom threw away a napkin and food wrapper, police collected them from the trash. The DNA was tested. It was a match. Jerry Westrom was arrested in February 2019, 26 years after Jeannie Childs was murdered. Westrom denied everything. He claimed he had never been inside Jeannie's apartment, never met her, never even been in her building. But investigators had one final piece of evidence: the footprint. Experts compared Westrom's bare feet to the bloody prints left at the crime scene. Not just the size, but the friction ridge detail, the same kind of unique patterns used in fingerprint analysis. The match was unmistakable. The footprint that had waited silently for decades finally had a name. At trial, the defense fought back. They pointed to missing evidence, untested items, and alternative suspects. They argued the investigation had tunnel vision. But prosecutors stayed focused on the facts. The DNA was found in multiple locations, the footprint matched, and Westrom had no innocent explanation for either. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty. Jerry Westrom was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2052. For Jeannie Childs' family, justice came late, but it came. A single footprint, ignored, preserved, and eventually believed.